Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the third season of Traversing the Stars podcast. How are my loyal listeners? Thank you for your continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. It's an amazing episode because Robert Venditti is back on the mothership. You know him as the writer of Superman 78 and Wesley Dodds Sandman from DC Comics. Now come aboard as we're traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Venditti. Thanks so much for the Traversing the Stars podcast again.
I appreciate you having me back. Thanks.
It's always my pleasure to have you on, sir. You now have been on my show more than anyone else, so thank you so much for doing that.
I should co-host with you.
You know what? At any time you'd want to, you're totally welcome on the show. I would love to have a celebrity co-host.
Yeah, celebrity. Yeah,
indeed. So, like I said, you've been on this. I've interviewed you now. I think this is our fourth or fifth time I'm talking on the show. So obviously you've been writing for a long time. So what have you learned along the way in writing, and what new things have you learned about writing since the last time we spoke?
Oh gosh, you're always learning. It's art. You know what I mean? It's not mathematics, so you're never going to solve it. What have I learned? I mean, everything. I started out not even knowing how to write a monthly comic series really at all, and I guess I've done over 300 of them now, I think, so you kind of learn about the pacing of that and the workflow. I think one of the biggest realizations to me beyond, just the writing craft was the business side of it, and really learning how to manage your time, multitask. It's a lot of deadlines, but it's different than other things because everybody else on the team is waiting for me to finish my job before they can start theirs. The artist can't draw, the inker can't ink, colorist can't color, letterer can't letter. So until I've done my job, everybody else is kind of waiting around. And so I always try to make sure that I'm ahead of deadline, giving people as much time as they need, because if I miss my deadline, editors will chop the issue up because the book has to ship when it has to ship. It has to be on time in stores. They'll chop the book up and give maybe 5 pages to another artist or whatever. The book will still come out on time, but I've just taken away 5 pages from somebody who was planning on that income. So I think that sort of constant treadmill of content generation that you get in monthly comics is something that makes it different than maybe being a musician or a novelist or a filmmaker or anything, because you just always having to generate and always hit deadlines and always be doing the next thing. And so, having the skill set to be able to do that across multiple projects at the same time, I would say is a really big thing that I've had to learn over the years.
Now you said you've done now over 300 series. Now 300 is approximately a long box. Do you keep the long boxes of your other comics books?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, there's 350. There's about each long box covers 350 comics.
Yeah.
So do you keep all your comics?
I do. The only the only collection I have is my own stuff, and that's just like I save like 3 copies of everything I do in case my kids and my grandkids might want it one day or something. So I'm looking in my closet right now. Got about 12 short boxes of stuff. I've done about 350 comic books, but I also save all the variant covers and all that stuff too. So yeah, so I've got about 12 short boxes. I don't know. Is it 2 short boxes in the long box? I don't know.
2 short boxes so you're looking at about 160 comics in per short box.
Okay, yeah. So about that. Yeah.
So you did 12, so you got about
6 long boxes.
Yeah. So quick math in my head, that's about 600, maybe 900.
Yeah.
Comic books, I think.
But like I say, I've got 3 copies of them, right? So
yeah. If anyone's listening to the show, please do the math for me. Feel free to post the exact number of comic books that Mr. Venditti actually owns.
But yeah, that's it. Other than the complete run of Astro City, I don't have really a collection of anything. Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you ever go back and read the ones that you've read? Even because we're gonna get to Superman 78 in a moment, but since you're writing continue that series or any of the others, do you ever go back and reread ones that you've written? Are you able to enjoy those that way?
So the last time I'll read something is when it comes from the printer. I get my comps and I'll read it one more time and I'll find if there, I'm looking for any typos
Yeah.
or any things that we didn't catch. Maybe art wasn't. Sometimes there'll be like an error with the digital translation of the art to print. Things
Hmm.
like that. So I'm looking for that. Balloon placements, things like that. Typos that I made, whatever. So any of that kind of stuff I'll look for, and generally that's the very last time that I'll ever read anything I've written. I will go back sometimes, like on Hawkman, it's 29 issues. I'll have to go back and use the issues as reference because I have
Hmm.
to, remember, who exactly was in the room and where were they positioned for me to do this flashback or whatever. But in terms of like reading things cover to cover, I don't think I've ever done that. Like I read at the time, well, like I say, what comes from the printer, and I don't think I ever read them ever again.
Hmm.
Because going back to kind of that first question, what do you learn? And Ed Piskor, who's the guy who did Hip Hop Family Tree, and he's now one of the two guys that does cartoon kayfabe with Jim Rugg. Actually, there's three of them. A lot of times Tom Scioli's in there too. But he had this great quote I read of his in an interview, which is that every time he sits down at the drawing table, he has a chance to draw the perfect comic book page. And every time he fails, but there's always the next page.
Hmm.
And that's really a great way to summarize the process, right? Because there's never going to be the perfect story. There's all going to be things
Hmm.
that could have been done differently. And what some person, I do something, somebody really likes it, somebody else really hates it. They're both right because it's art, it's subjective. And so to go back and read all those things again, I think I would just see all the things I want to do
Hmm.
differently.
I know that. I mean, I do some indie comics on the side, and I don't think there's ever been a comic I read through. I'm going, wow, this is so wonderful. I always think to myself, yeah, I probably could have fixed that right there. Like, oh, this would been a much better idea if I go in that direction. I was like, oh, damn
And
it.
it'll always be that way because every time you write something, you'll get better. You
Yeah.
know, and so looking in the rear view with the stuff you've already written, you didn't have those lessons at the time. So people always ask me, are there any projects that I regret, or that I wish I hadn't done, or anything like that? And there are certainly things that I wish would have come out better. I don't think that my New 52 Green Lantern stuff is all that great, but
Oh, I loved it.
that was the very beginning of my career.
Yeah.
And I think if you go from Green Lantern number 21 in the New 52 all the way to Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps number 52, I mean, that's 87 issues. And when you count annuals and things that I wrote
Yeah.
in there, and I think Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps is number 50, but it's like 87 something Green Lantern issues. And I think if you read them all in a row, you see me grow as a writer.
Mm.
So do I wish that the New 52 stuff had been better? Yeah, but not to the extent that I want to go back and wish I hadn't done it or anything, because those are the bricks upon which I've built more of the wall. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? So I don't have any regrets about that stuff.
Well, I'll go on record and say I loved your Green Lantern work.
I appreciate that.
It's where at least I was first introduced you because I think I don't know if I told you or not. I'm a major Green Lantern fan.
Sure. Yeah.
I have for anyone who doesn't know me, I have every Green Lantern comic book from his second appearance in the Showcase to now, every single solitary issue, including annuals, miniseries, one shots, and then spin-off series like Guy Gardner,
You're
Mosaic.
saving up for that first issue, huh?
Yeah, but every single I've never been able to get that first Showcase appearance of his. That's like the one
Yeah.
bucket
I
list
mean,
comic
that's a
book
pricey issue. Yeah.
right, right. If
Yeah.
any rich listeners are listening, help
Yeah.
your host out. Get me the one last Green Lantern one that I'm missing. But yeah, I bought every. I literally have. I think it's almost 3 or 4 long boxes now of all Green Lantern because we had all the annuals and everything else. There's something like 640, 650 Green Lantern comic books from the regular series. You had them all up. Then add all the miniseries and all that other stuff and all the other ongoings. It's
Yeah.
something like 1100, 1200 comic books.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I don't regret it. I don't wish I hadn't done it. I just feel like I found my voice more with Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, and it was more the kind of comics I wanted to make. Whereas that New 52 Green Lantern stuff, I was learning a lot, not just about how to write comic books, but even that was a tumultuous time at DC. The second
Mm.
half of the 52. And I think when I wrote Green Lantern number 21, I'd written maybe 5 comic books in my life, you
Oh
know.
wow.
Oh, that's not true because I'd done the surrogates. I'd written maybe 10 comic books in my life, but 5 of them were like superhero books. And so it was a huge learning experience for me. And I feel like with Rebirth, when we got to do Hal Jordan and Green Lantern Corps, that was when I was able to just really start fresh, and kind of do things that I wanted to do and execute them better. So I don't regret any of it. I don't wish I hadn't done any of it.
Well,
I just
well,
think that they are as good as the things that came later.
well, I think one regret that fans have is that we didn't get more Hawkman from you. I kind of feel like Hawkman, you're on a roll, and but nice to have had a 40, 50 issue, 60 issue
Oh,
run.
I could have done that series forever. Yeah. And then even with the interruptions from the events that they did, in the second year when they did Hawkman, everybody got interrupted for Year of the Villain.
Mm.
But I think there's only two books that had to do Year of the Villain and then go right into another storyline. One was Hawkman and the other one was Supergirl. And so, back to back events, but even with those, I feel like we were able to make them feel like a piece of
Mm.
the larger thing that we were doing, and it didn't seem like too much of a departure. So I would have loved to have done it for 50 issues. The ideas were definitely there, but 29 issues is also a really healthy run for Hawkman.
Well, Hawkman, that's the second or third longest run of Hawkman that there's ever been, because there was Hawkman with Palmiotti stopped at 49. There was the Hawk World that did 32. But beyond
Yeah,
that, that's the next longest run that Hawkman's ever had.
I believe so. Yeah, and 29, I think, was also the same length as the Silver Age, the Gardner Fox, Joe Kubert,
Maybe.
Murphy Anderson era. I think that was 29 issues too.
I'm not.
Uh,
I'm not. I don't can't remember. I mean, I don't know if you quite count Hawkman and the Atom or not, because technically they spun out into a set. They changed the title and spun out on it.
yeah, yeah, I
So I'm not
I
sure if that
do.
counts.
I actually do count that. Yeah, so I think it comes to 29 maybe. Yeah,
Maybe.
but I mean, in the modern era, that's a really healthy run of any
Yeah.
book. You know what I'm saying? So especially for Hawkman, so that's fine.
Well, I was reading your social media because I social media stalk you from time to time and see what you're up to.
Yeah,
And you mentioned that a bucket list character to write was Wesley Dodds Sandman.
yeah.
He was always a bucket list for you.
Yeah,
So,
any of the JSA characters really. The whole JSA cast, I would love to do any of them. I would say tr trending not as much Alan Scott and Jay Garrick, only because I've already done so much Green Lantern and I've already written the Flash. I mean, I love those characters, but like Our Man, Wildcat, Wesley Dodds, Sandman, any of those kinds of things. Doctor Midnight, I would love to do any of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
so what is about those characters that make into your bucket list? I mean, they've been around for. I mean, Wesley Dodds has been around for since 1940. So he's 63. No, not 63.
83, yeah.
83. He's
83.
83 years old of a character. He seems to be best known for Mystery Theater, Sandman Mystery Theater.
Yeah, which
So
is
what was
great.
about him that you thought to yourself he's worth exploring further, and what new thing can you say about a character that's 83 years old?
I think that it's the pulp aspect of the character that really appeals to me. I just, I've done Green Lantern, I've done X-Men Man of War, I've done The Flash, I've done, Superman, but I've never really had a chance to do something pulpy.
Hmm.
And I like the idea of giving him these sort of dark noir pulp settings. But unlike Batman, he remains optimistic and believes the best in people. I kind of like that juxtaposition, which is how I write Superman and
Hmm.
how I tend to think about character. And so um, it was just an idea that I always had for Sandman. And when they were doing this new golden age, it's an idea I talked to about DC before, and they're looking to do these new golden age miniseries, and it seemed like a good chance to do it. I love Sandman Mystery Theater, huge fan of it. I didn't read it when it was coming out. I read it maybe 10 years ago,
Hmm.
and I loved it. I can't even imagine what it must have been like in the 90s going to the store and picking that up. There's a lot of books like that, like the John Ostrander Spectre run. When I read that, I was like, I can't even imagine going to the comic shop in the 90s and picking this book up. Like, it's crazy. Hawk World is another great example, the original Tim Truman series. Um, so, yeah, it just felt like an opportunity to try to say, like, why sleep gas? I know it was the golden age, and things could be a little like that sometimes. But to me, what could that say about his character? And well, maybe he invented sleep gas because he didn't want to hurt anybody. Like he wanted to
Hmm.
stop crime, but he wanted to do it in a non-violent way because he's a pacifist. And so, okay, if that's true, he would have invented the sleep gas, but what would he have mistakenly invented along the way that was
Hmm.
potentially lethal? And what if those secrets were locked away, while World War II was building and the United States may or may not get involved, and now somebody gets his chemical cookbook with all these, chemical weapons in it that he never wanted anybody to see. He just kept them as a matter of research while he was trying to make a sleep gas, and now he's got to go get those back. And so putting him in a position of trying to do something nonviolent, and in the process he unleashes something
Hmm.
potentially horribly violent. I just thought that was an interesting story.
Now, you refer to it as a miniseries, so we're talking about it's gonna be a short series. About how long are you talking?
Six issues. Yeah,
6 issues. Six
yeah,
issues.
it's already all written, and we're about, I don't know, 5 pages away from the whole thing being drawn. Riley
So
Rosso is the artist, and he's just doing an absolutely amazing job. Like he's such a joy to work with. And I think when I wrote the first issue, I didn't know Riley was going to be the artist. And then when I did know he was going to be the artist, it definitely changed how I wrote, and I wrote specific things, specifically when getting into issue 3 and into issue 4. I wrote just because I wanted to see him draw it. Um, he's just been amazing to work with, so creative, um, just an absolute joy. I would love to do another Sandman series with him, but I'd do any project with him. Just all around great, and could not be happier than with the way the book looks.
So when you say 6 issue miniseries, is it 6 issue miniseries with a chance of more, or is it 6 issues and you're going to stop?
No, I mean, no, it's 6 issue. It's a 6 issue miniseries. Yeah. But like Superman 78, if it does well well, if it continues to do well, I mean, the first issue sold out in its first week. So if it continues to do well, of course, sales talk, and they'll always do another one. And, I've got an idea for what the next story would be, but that's up to DC and how they make those calls.
Because I mean, I think Wesley Dodds deserves an ongoing, don't you? I mean, you can tell
Sure.
6 good issues. You can tell 6 more after that, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I do think that the marketplace can be kind of challenging for those non-marquee characters.
Hmm.
Of course, Batman, of course, Superman, of course, Wonder Woman, of course, Green Lantern, of course, Flash. After that, it starts to get a little hard with some of the characters.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's kind of funny. Like Sandman, like Our Man, like Doctor Midnight. They've been around for so many years, so many decades. But it's been a long time since they were able to carry their own series. I don't know if they ever carried a long term series. Even the 40s, I think they were more. They were on the not just side. They were called All Star Squadron, or whatever they were called back then. So
Star Squadron, yeah. And
how
then and then the JSA, the first
right?
the first team. Um, yeah, I mean Wesley Dodds had that Mystery Theater run, which
Yeah.
was like 72 issues, maybe, I think. I can't remember. So that was a good long run. But yeah, I don't know if Our Man ever had his own series or anything like that. But I mean, even right now, as part of the new Golden Age, we're doing the Sandman book, but there's also a Jay Garrick Flash book and a
Yep.
Alan Scott Green Lantern book. Those are only 6 issue series too. Alan Scott and Jay Garrick are pretty marquee characters. Like
Yeah.
everybody knows who they are. Like I say, sometimes it's just a tough marketplace.
So what's interesting about Wesley Dawson, how you're writing is that in the first issue, Wesley is discussed being haunted by a fear like his father's. Is the shared fear specifically connected to someone using science and invention to commit atrocities, or is it just a fear of evil in general?
I'm sorry, repeat that. What'd you say?
His he talked about how he's haunted by a fear like his father's. Is
Oh
it a
yeah,
fear specific to science, someone abusing science and invention,
he
or is
just
it
grew up hearing his father. His father came home from World War I and the trench warfare. Uh, changed. And Wesley grew up seeing that effect on his father and hearing his father tell these stories, and it just left a mark on him. That war is the great calamity. And now here he is, a young man, and the story's set in 1940. World War II is already happening in Europe.
mm,
It seems like it's getting closer and closer to America every day, and how do you possibly stop something so big as war?
Hmm.
Um, there's got to be a sense of hopelessness and fear attached to that for somebody who grew up hearing those stories of his father. And so for him, he tries to come up with a way of maybe having peaceful conflict resolution, not peaceful, but nonviolent conflict resolution in terms of sleep gas, uh, for which he's mocked because what a dumb idea. Um, but then, like I say, his book gets stolen with all his other weapons in it that he never intended to use or for anybody to see. And now he's got to get that back before they're unleashed on the world.
Now, one thing about the Sandman persona is that there's a little bit of a suggestion, not a huge one, but it's there that when he gets, um, when he's kind of frustrated about something, he uses this persona a little bit to kind of like vent a little bit. Is there a venting aspect to his persona, or is it purely altruistic?
Um, I don't see him as a guy who has pent up rage or anything like that. That's not how I see the character. I see him as someone who does what he does because he's trying to help. He's trying to make the world a better place, for those who aren't criminal. Uh, and this is what he has to do. But I think the happiest day of his life would be the day when they didn't need him anymore,
Hmm.
and he could just go away. Um, but he's somebody who wants to believe the best in humanity. And so, even though the idea that there would never be any more crime is absurd, I see him as somebody who still holds out hope that day could come,
Hmm.
and it's sort of that optimism I think that can lead to get him into trouble. Um, but I think it says a lot about him that faced with the criminal aspects and murder and all the things that he faces, he still finds a way to hold out hope in a way that I don't feel Batman does. I feel like Batman is working out anger and he is working out aggression and he is mad at the world. And I think my interpretation of Batman is he's somebody who sees and assumes the absolute worst in people.
Hmm.
Wesley Dodds is the opposite of that. He wants to see the best in people.
Well, a character in the second issue that is proving very helpful for Wesley Dodds is Mr. Vanderlyle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anyone who is cynical, like I am, about people wonders if that helpfulness is actually sincere or not, or is it sinister? So, what can you tell us about Mr. Vanderlyle?
Yeah, so Mr. Van der Lyle was a contemporary of Wesley's father. They were really close friends, were in business together. He's known Wesley ever since he was a young child. Wesley's grown up with him around in a paternal sense,
Hmm.
you know. And it's Mr. Van der Lyle who makes the introduction for Wesley to a colonel in the United States Army to help Wesley pitch his idea of sleep gas as a method of humane warfare. So he is helping. Wesley also has uh, Diane Belmont helping him. He also has Humphreys, his trusty uh, butler, helping him. So he does have people around him. And I think in issue 3, we'll meet another character uh, from Sandman history that helps him. Um, so yeah, we'll have to see where the series goes. I certainly don't want to give away any details about what happens, um, other than to say it's a challenging mystery for Wesley to try to unravel, um, and there's going to be some complexities along the way. Yeah,
Now, Wesley seems to be seeing the future. Is he just imagining the future, or is he actually seeing it?
he has prophetic dreams. Yeah, he doesn't always he isn't always able to interpret them. He doesn't always know what they mean. They don't. It's not like seeing the future, but he's haunted by these prophetic dreams. That's a staple of his character, and a lot of times they will tell him a bad thing that's going to happen, but not say who's responsible or give the identity or anything like that. He just knows this bad thing's going to happen and he's got to try to stop it. So in his dreams, he is seeing the results of his book, his journal being taken with all his chemical concoctions in it. And now he's having visions of trench warfare in World War II, but there's these horrible, deadly gases and things that are killing soldiers by the millions, and so he sees that, and it's what's propelling him through the story. He's got to find a way to stop that from happening.
Has it ever been established in continuity where those future prophecies are coming from?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I know where I think they come from,
Okay.
but
Is this an exclusive? So do I get an exclusive
no,
on
I don't
this?
know if I'm supposed. I have an idea of how I was gonna do some things with the character that we may yet get to do someday, so I won't say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you ever want to give an exclusive, this is the show for it.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Now, one thing about Wesley Dodds was talking almost again. You talked about the sleep gas and all the other gases that he created. Now, there's the famous proverb about what good intentions gets you. Is he an example of what good intentions get you? That proverb.
Yes and no. I mean, I don't know. He is a science. He does have a scientific uh, uh, interest. You know what I'm saying? And so, because he set out to do something good, and he made some scientific errors along the way. I mean, that's a part of the scientific process. I don't know that he would view it as. Well, I don't know that I would view it as good intentions, lead to bad consequences, but certainly he carries some guilt over the fact that, he did, if not for his desire to do this thing, he would not have created all these other things. And now he's got to stop them from getting out, or all these people will have died, not just because of what he did, but he wasn't able to protect the secrets. And should he have destroyed the journal? Like, as a matter of science, you keep your research and your past experimentations because you never know you might need those again. You certainly don't want to repeat the same mistakes, but certainly he would carry some guilt about those things for sure. Yeah. And as we progress through the series, you'll see that emotional journey for him.
So the other thing at the end of the second issue is that we're introduced to the evil Sandman. You see him at the end. Is the identity of the evil Sandman already? Is he a character that you already introduced? Is he someone who the breadcrumbs already been dropped? Is something totally different?
Not a character I've already introduced. No.
Okay.
Yeah, not a character I've already introduced, except to the extent that in the first issue, you see like some quick shots of that character breaking into Wesley's laboratory and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. But you don't see him any. You only see him in like a shadow or something like those. Like, you don't
Yeah,
get.
correct.
That's what you see in his face though. So he's
Correct.
not like Vanderlyle or anyone
Correct.
like that.
Yeah.
Because I was reading the other issues. I read them back. I was like, he's there. I know he's one of them. He's there somewhere.
No, haven't met him yet. Yeah.
So, what kind of things can readers look forward to in the next four issues of Sandman?
Oh, hopefully it's a good mystery. I really want to lean into the noir and the mystery of it. We're gonna, have some classic noir scenes, I feel like. Um, really excited about the character journey that Wesley goes through. Very excited about the work that Riley's doing, and Ivan Placencia on colors. It's Sandman's a certain kind of book. You got to be able to color the gases and things, and do it in a way that you feel them and they feel claustrophobic, but they don't oppress the art. You know what I'm trying to say? And so, really, just a fantastic team. Tom Napolitano on letters, doing some wonderful things with sound effects. At the end of the first issue, the sirens of the fire trucks going by, whine through the panel and things. So yeah, I'm just excited for people to see where we go with it, and hopefully they enjoy it.
Well, another series that you have, or you're going back to, is Superman 78. For the readers, listeners who don't know, this is based on the Christopher Reeve, the first two movies of Christopher Reeve's Superman from the early 70s, early 80s. First one movie is the 1970s, 78. Second one is 80, I imagine, or was that 79? I can't remember.
I think I'm 81 maybe. I can't
81.
remember. Yeah.
So, what brought you back to Superman 78? Why is it called The Metal Curtain?
Yeah, I mean, I love doing the first series. This is my version of Superman. I didn't grow up reading comics, so the Christopher Reeve version of Superman has always been my version of Superman. One of my favorite characters in all of fiction because of those movies when I saw them as a kid. We had the opportunity to do the first series. It went really, really well. It's been very, very successful. Here it is over 2 years later, and people are still doing convention exclusives of that series. It's not in paperback yet. It's still only in hardcover. Mondo did a release where they released the soundtrack with a copy of the hardcover in it, and so because it did so well, DC wanted to do more, and I always had this idea for using Metallo, but making Metallo a Soviet soldier and sort of doing that Cold War era type story that those Superman films never really did. Quest for Peace was about nuclear weapons, but it wasn't necessarily about Soviets and Americans, and that sort of communist paranoia that permeated that era. And you see in a lot of films, they never really tapped into that. So our idea for the second series is we know that when Krypton exploded, some of the kryptonite meteors came to Earth along with Kal-El's ship, and that's where Lex Luthor gets the meteor that he uses in the first film. Well, we're just going to say there's more than one, and that one also landed in Russia, and Russia has had that all this time, and now they come into possession of a suit of armor that is able to weaponize the radiation of the kryptonite, and now they've got their own super soldier to go against Superman, and East is going to meet West, through the battle of their two biggest heroes, Superman and Metallo, and for the fate of the free world, So we're going to see what that battle is like, and how does the Superman of those films, how does he defeat an adversary powered with a substance that, for him to even wear it around his neck, almost drowned him, If Tessmacher hadn't taken it off, he would have drowned in that pool, So that's the challenge that Superman has to face.
So the last series, the villain was Brainiac. Now it's Metallo. How different is this Metallo to the comic book version? How's he written specifically to counter Christopher Reeve's type of Superman?
Yeah, well, in the comics, Metallo is an American soldier who's created by the U.S. military as a soldier if Superman ever goes wrong. You know what I'm saying? So this is different. He's a communist soldier created by the Soviets, or he's a Soviet soldier, I should say, created by the Soviet Union to defeat Superman and ostensibly then crush America, right? So very different things. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
How was he designed specifically as a character to reflect the Christopher Reeve Superman version of Superman?
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, I don't know how to answer that without giving stuff away. Aside from just the physical power of him having kryptonite and this sort of zeal, this zeal he has as a Soviet soldier to prove the Soviet Union is mightier, temperamentally, it's a very different approach to being a hero. Like Clark Kent, Superman approaches heroism as doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Metallo is driven more by defeating the adversary. Superman would rather there were no adversaries. There's always a compassion there and an effort to do no harm. Well, Metallo is somebody who seeks to do harm first. And so they're really polar opposites in that regard.
Well, the other thing with Superman is that the whole idea of Superman is the truth, justice, and the American way. Obviously, in the 1978, we're in the Cold War with Russia. They're our primary adversary. I guess they are again. History recycles itself. But back in 1978, they were definitely in the Cold War with Russia. How does Superman feel about enemies of the United States? Are they his enemies because they're the United States enemies? Are they enemies because they do things that he believes are wrong? How does he view that kind of?
I guess maybe what you're asking is, would Superman just go over and conquer Russia because he thinks the Soviet Union is bad or something? And my answer to that would be no. I would think that Superman would hope that they would learn to be good to each other, and things like that. He's caught up in this fight because the Soviet Union through Metallo comes for him and for what he cares about. they strike first. And I think that's always the way with Superman. Superman always reacts. He always defends. He never attacks. He's never preemptive. He's always reactive
Mm.
because he wants to believe the best in people and that when left to their own devices, they won't seek to do harm. And so I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. So Russia's creation of Metallo a act of paranoia? Do you have a good reason to be worried about the America's Superman, as it were, from their perspective, or is this like almost like a cynical act that they feel a need to go after Superman, that they don't recognize Superman as a world protector instead of a country protector?
I think they probably view the Soviets probably view Superman almost like an arms race, right? Like if you've got this many nukes, we need to have more nukes, and then you're going to get more nukes, so we got to get more nukes. Well, all this time, the United States has had Superman, which is more powerful than a nuke, as we know, because in the first movie there were nuclear weapons, and he was able to dispose of them. So Russia would view that as a massive threat. You put missiles in Turkey, we're going to put missiles in Cuba. These are all things that happen in real history. Um, the fact that Superman, in my estimation, wouldn't go conquer the Soviet Union doesn't mean that they also aren't paranoid that he might. You know what I'm saying? In the same way that if Superman was a Soviet, America would be paranoid about the very same thing. I think in the Cold War, when the world was cut in half and there were two sides, I think either side would react similarly depending on where Superman was.
The Superman, in your opinion, value citizens of Russia the same way he would value citizens of the United States?
100%. 100%. Yeah.
So what? So is there a concern of a character like Metallo in Russia itself? Does Superman see him as a threat to the people of Russia potentially, or the communist government as a threat to the citizens of Russia, the way he would?
I think you'll have to continue reading the series to
Oh,
find out.
okay. You're gonna go. You're gonna go into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So what kind of so having this is the third Superman 78 series, right?
Second.
Second. Okay. Um, what have you under like what how is this one a product of what you learned in the first time around of the with Christopher Reeve Superman?
Um, anything else, just taking what
Hmm.
you've learned from past projects and bringing it forward. Um, I mean, we very much try to approach them as a film style of storytelling. Like I don't think Superman 78 should necessarily be an ongoing series. I like the idea that there's a 6 issue story and then you wait a little while and then there's another 6 issue story, just like you see a film and then you have to wait for the next film. So
Hmm.
each story is self-contained. You could read this one without ever having read the previous one. Um, so it's just a joy to work on these characters. And Gavin Guidry is the artist on this series. And, just like I was saying about Riley earlier, Gavin's just been a joy to work with. And um, he really captures, I think, the warmth and the heart uh, and the joy of the Christopher Reeve version of Superman. When Superman would walk on the screen, you just felt better, looking at him. And Gavin's really able to capture that. And there's a scene that happens, a story beat that happens in issue 6 that kind of closes the loop on something from an earlier issue that we call back to. And I don't want to tell you about it because I don't want to spoil it. But it's probably my favorite Superman moment that I've written, and it's a splash page. And Gavin really just nails that moment in a way that I was so grateful for. And so he he draws from a place where he feels it too. And I think that just makes for a great story.
Now you say it's been 2 years since the first Superman 78 finished.
Yeah, I want to say the first one started, I can't remember exactly, but I want to say it was October of 2020. No, was it June of 2021? I think it was June of 2021. I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah.
So how much time has elapsed in Superman's world?
No, that doesn't make any sense. Not much. Yeah, not much. I'm gonna look it up because I'm curious. Not much time. He I don't date it, and I don't even really date where the movie, I mean uh where the story is set. Like in my head, in my, head canon when I'm writing, I think of it as being written uh the story's taking place after Superman 2, the film, and
Hmm.
before Superman 3, the film. Um but it doesn't have to be that way. That's just how I interpret it. So I don't know. I didn't really sit down and say this is 6 months after the first series or anything along those lines. Um, but it definitely takes place afterwards because there's some things that you see that are, recurring, like the bottle city of Kandor being at the Fortress of Solitude and things like that. First series came out in August of 2021.
Okay.
Yep.
So how has Superman grown since this issue before into this issue since the first Brainiacs, because it's technically the third movie, your third, I'm saying, the third movie
Sure,
in
yeah.
your headcanon has come out. He's now been Superman for a while. Now this is the fourth movie in some way. How has he grown into this one?
I think he just feels a lot of responsibility, the weight of the job, I guess, for lack of a better word, is heavy on him. He definitely feels, in the first series, he was actually captured by Brainiac and put inside the bottle city of Kandor, where he's reunited with his Kryptonian parents, Lara and Jor-El. And, there's that sense of him being torn between two worlds.
Hmm.
I think you start to see in the second issue of this new series a desire for him to want to be more fully in this world and what that means for his relationship with Lois and all that kind of stuff. And you know, but I got to say, like at his core, I don't think he changes. I don't think he ever becomes somebody who is going to assume the worst in people or is going to give up on humanity or uh, any of those kinds of things. In that way, I feel like he's incorruptible as a character. He would have been corrupted already if he could be corrupted.
Do you think
That's
you
why
ever
I don't understand the sort of desire that a lot of, not to say it's not a valid artistic choice or whatever, but for me as a writer, where I come from in terms of aesthetics, I don't understand the desire to make a darker version of Superman. All those kind of Elseworld stories, or I don't know, Superman getting corrupted in some way. Like he's the incorruptible character. Uh,
do you think you ever write a 1940s version, a golden age version of Superman?
sure. I mean, I'd be happy to. He's my favorite character. I have no desire to write Batman. Uh, but I would love to write as much Superman as I can. I love doing these books because they're wholly ours. Nobody's ever done comic books with this version of Superman except
Hmm.
for us.
Well, one question I forgot to ask: the Wesley Dodds Sandman, is
Mhm.
that within current DC continuity? Is this alternate universe
It's
Wesley
set in
Dodds
1940. And in my estimation, it's a real adventure he had back in 1940.
in the current DC continuity?
To me, yes. Yeah.
Because sometimes what we forget about it with DC is that sometimes they've had, for a little while, they had an alternate Earth 2 was just society was when
Yeah,
they
no,
had
to me, this is our Earth and all that
okay.
stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, because so like it would technically Superman, I guess, could show up then in the 1940 because in the
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't think Superman 78 could, right?
right.
That's not, he showed up, whatever. I can't remember the exact date, but it's in the very first issue of Metal Curtain. But like I backdated the scene with Lex Luthor in the library in the first film when he's looking up and he discovers that the meteor landed in Ethiopia.
Hmm.
That's taking place in 1978. And he says Superman's rocket crashed X number of years ago. I want to say it's 1951, but I can't swear to that. And
Hmm.
so we know from the context of the films, Superman's only been on Earth since 1951 or whatever that date is.
Hmm.
Uh, so he could never be in the Golden Age.
So what's next from you?
Um, Gosh, we've got 4 issues left of Sandman to go, 5 issues of Superman 78. Got a couple projects at DC that haven't been announced yet. Got a lot of things I've done for Bad Idea. Next year, I'm going to have a lot of stuff coming out from them. So I think those would be the most up and coming things that I have going on. Yeah.
Well, when you're ready to talk about your next project, come on back. I guess we'll see you in November.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. You as well. Take care.